Hello, welcome to New Nordic School Lockdown Reflections webinar. Hopefully streaming live now, sorry for the delay. We are really excited to be delivering this webinar today, and I've got some very esteemed guests which I'll introduce shortly to you. The basic format of the webinar will be in the sort of following format really. I'll be doing an introduction to New Nordic School for many guests who may not have heard of us before, and then I'll be handing over and introducing the panel, and then we'll be asking a number of questions which I think hopefully you'll find very informative, and you'll get some practical takeaways to hopefully deal with this challenging situation that we're all facing. So the global pandemic of COVID-19 has brought sort of an everlasting impact on education. Indian students, parents and educators and leaders have come to realise that the new normal needs to be more flexible and collaborative. We talk a lot about children needing to learn important future skills such as critical thinking, problem solving, creativity and communication skills, but adults also need these skills more than ever. So we want to talk about our reflections during this lockdown on education. And so how do we embrace this transformational educational agenda in a lockdown and take education in a positive direction forward? I'd like to share with you an introduction into New Nordic School and really just give you a flavour of who we are. And it's kind of, in some ways, apt that really that we're facing this challenging time, and New Nordic School, we've been trying to develop an education system for the future that's really future ready, because at the moment we're operating in a culture and education system that's really outdated, and it's time for change. And I think these testing times are proving that to be so. So at New Nordic School, we have developed an education system that's really looking to embrace change and be future ready. Our educational system is a pre-K through 12 system that really is applying the Finnish curriculum at the heart. We're a Finnish-born company. We look to Finland for our competencies and at the core of what we're doing. But also we then combine that with international best practice and make it locally relevant wherever we are. Our solution is important in terms of involving every child, in terms of them unlocking their potential and giving purpose to learning as we move forwards. Our curriculum is called the Nordic Baccalaureate Curriculum, and it's a fully integrated and disciplinary curriculum. It's personalized, it's purposeful, and it's really transcends from each stage during the course of a student's life in a school. It's based on 3 layers, really. At the core of our curriculum is our core competencies, which is based on the Finnish core competencies. We wrap that around subject knowledge and skills, and the heart of our curriculum is the UN Sustainability Development Goals, which gives real purpose to learning and drives students' passion to want to solve an issue that's relevant in life and learn how to learn doing so. The reality is, in real life, things don't happen in isolation. So our curriculum is integrated and it's wrapped around what we call quests. Quests are an interdisciplinary form of learning where the Sustainability Development Goal theme lies and where students learn purposeful learning throughout their journey through the school. We also have a third component to our educational system, which is the Smart Learning Platform. And our Smart Learning Platform is really trying to solve 2 problems in education. One, this challenge that all teachers face on being able to differentiate their learning. And the second challenge on being able to actually receive real purposeful professional development that enhances their ability to improve the quality of teaching and learning in their environment. Our focus on India is very much around two important goals. We want to reduce the real dependency on grades and testing. And I'm going to be asking the panel later on about that in terms of the importance of examinations versus and knowledge versus the importance of skills in the future. And also we want to enable transformation by empowering Indian teachers to improve, to give them the pedagogical skills to improve both now and in the future. We have a team in India who are willing to listen to you in terms of following this webinar, and we'll be introducing that later on during this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. And I'd like to sort of offer the floor to them to introduce themselves, and start with Mrs. Revathi to begin with.
Very good evening to all of you. My name is Revathi Srinivasan. I'm the director of the Singhania group of schools. We have about 6 schools spread across the country, and it's a very inclusive school, and we are based out of Thane in Maharashtra, very close to Mumbai. And I think it is wonderful to be able to interact with all of you. It is only an exchange of ideas that's going to take us to the next level. Yes, this pandemic has created an opportunity out of this setback. And I think each one of us is trying to make the best of it. But this is the best time for collaboration in education. And that's why we are all here to collaborate with our ideas. Looking forward to a wonderful session.
Thank you. Mrs. Lata.
So my name is Lata Vaidyanathan, and a very good evening to all present in this forum today. I have had 40 years in education now, and had been very fortunate to serve some of the best schools, former principal of Modern School, Barakhamba Road, the Bhavan School, and founder principal of the Aisha School. The last 14 years were in Delhi. 20 years now in Delhi. And currently I'm the director of a school called the Gyan Bharati School, Saket, which is also around 50 years old. So that is my current position. All that I want to say is that, I wonder how this opportunity that has come to us through a very unprecedented challenge is the real disruption that will change the education system. No slow injections worked. So this is a huge opportunity for us to one boom and change the system if possible. Isn't it really, really strange that what 2 world wars and 44 grams of the atom bomb couldn't do, less than 1 gram of the virus can change our life forever. This is what, so the change, the new normal, and I think we're all looking forward to learning from each other, more from what we could not do, and make sure that we'll do it. Together we'll learn.
Thank you. Dr. Rajesh.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Rajesh Hassija. By designation, I'm Managing Director of Indraprastha Schools, Dwarka, Paschim Bihar and Noida. But by choice, I'm a classroom teacher. Yes, COVID has created something which is unparalleled in the history, but every challenge brings an opportunity. Post-COVID situations are not going to be the same as it was earlier. We need to now innovate, recreate, and look for a new paradigm of education. Probably this webinar and the question which Stephen has already finalized, I'm sure going to evolve a few thoughts which will help in shaping the policy. So looking forward for a very learning experience through this webinar. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. And Fatema.
Hi, good afternoon, and I'm hoping you haven't saved the youngest for the last, but I am humbled by the experience that's a part of this panel. Quite frankly, it's over 150 years of experience right here, which is exciting. I am the entrepreneur, also a veteran of 3 educational startups, close to 20 years in the education space. And I agree with Lata. We needed this injection because we've been talking about it for 20 years in India, at least from the time I've been in this industry, and I dare say a lot more. Unfortunately, not enough was done. The Agarkar Center of Excellence, which I've recently co-founded, I'm crazy into launch in COVID-19 incubation. So it's all of 2 months, as old as this is in India. And I dare say opportunities are here to be taken. And need to have a bit of direction, they need collaborative effort. So that's what Agarkar Center of Excellence does. It combines education and sport. We do everything in the education space, and excited to share some thoughts, experience already in the last 8 weeks. I'm also, by the way, quite a veteran with these webinars. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. So, just 1 second. So yes, I want to introduce the first question to you. And I want to address this question, first of all, to Mrs. Lata. So our first question is about, obviously, Corona and COVID-19 has pushed us out of our comfort zones for many of us. And it's also made us rethink about education systems. How do you think India has responded to this situation?
So, Stephen, thank you. I was just thinking about 2 things as I started looking at how we all have responded to the situation. Metaphorically and borrowed literally are these 2 examples I feel. One is that once upon a time, the tiger was called the king of the jungle, and today it is one of the most protected species. So we find them in cages. Secondly, it is so interesting to see that when small incremental changes happened in the environment around us, the response was much less when suddenly one fine day they said climate change means half of the world gone. So I think we have a similar situation to see right now, that we are poised in for a change that was required much earlier. We are poised in for a change which will be the new norm in the educational field. And I think towards that, this shock treatment that we have all received in the most unpredictable and unprecedented way is well in place, not to celebrate necessarily, but to make sure that the change will not disrupt anything that we want to do in the lives of children. And as educators, I think we'll have to lead the bandwagon. Having said that, one of the first things when this happened is that all schools, all governments told us to just shut down in whatever states we were, whether exams were going on, where the results were given, whether board exams were in process, we just had to shut down. So what is the first thing we did? Very incomplete understanding, very less understood, highly challenged technologically in most of the places, and completely realizing that 3 million children on streets and 230 million children to be educated across this country, and we were in this position. But every school, small or big, informed or less informed, old or young, I can today at the end of these 2-3 months very certainly say that everybody has responded and made sure that while the malls closed down, while the theater closed down, while the aviation industry, trips and tourism closed down, schools closed down, but academics went on. Because I think teachers and schools and the managements realized that education is not a process that can stop. Therefore, the first response is that academics went on in most of the schools. However, there were a lot of difficulties, and switching on from the offline to the online happened overnight as if it was natural to them. It wasn't natural. There were schools, including mine, which said, okay, nothing for the next 4 days. We took our parents and stakeholders on board, and we said nothing for the next 4 days. This is going to be the time to just first prepare ourselves to make sure that we continue it seamlessly. So what next happened was training of teachers and looking at the entire systems, trying to understand the learning management systems, the content management systems, looking at the technology supports available, and also being as empathetic and as sympathetic as one could be about the kind of tooling and technologies available in the homes. But we certainly started opening and rendering our educative process, the lessons through all these modes. We quickly realized that suddenly everyone was talking a new language about keeping quiet, the mute, the unmute, and the entire language that goes around it in terms of whether it's a Zoom, whether it's a video conferencing platform, or whether it was a Microtech team or Microsoft team or a Google Suite, whatever, by whatever names we wanted to call it. All of them needed to be trained, sorted, and selected, and teachers just took it to like fish takes to water, and the process seemed to continue. However, inefficiently or at times with a lot of challenges, but it happened. The third thing was taking up, and this posed one challenge, that how do we look at it as an educational environment? And quickly, I want to say this to all of you, that as an educational environment, we had moved from, it's like the difference that we see between a movie and a theater. Both of them have acting as its core, and yet they're two different mediums of entertainment. Exactly like we found ourselves the way we handle technology and education versus classroom, which is offline. And the environments changed from face to face and recognition and emotional and everything being addressed, as opposed to sitting online and addressing the students and using all possible competencies available within that short time. And now I would say at the end of 2.5 months, and with the break of the summer vacation, we feel better about delivering our lessons. Parents struggled to fit into this because they were also in the same lockup. They needed to work with limited tools, no matter how good their households were, and they were all stretching for the same time. So all of this also required to be reorganized. But the fact that it got reorganized is one of the lessons, I think, which can be counted under the response systems of this new system. And then, of course, the struggle with institutions who had to understand that all these tools are not available with all the kind of students we have. It's very easy to believe that, we have done this, we have risen to the challenge, the teachers are doing what they're doing, but we very soon realized that almost 60% of the children were still not on board. We have the responsibility of the RT students, we have children who are economically more challenged, we have children who have absolutely no gadgetry at home, they have no internet access, they have no bandwidths, and I know we'll deal with it in a subsequent question of yours maybe, but I think these were new challenges and we are responding to it. And I think a little later, one could share maybe about the states we are in and in our neighboring states, how these have been addressed at the state level with central guidance. So these were some of our responses that we have seen really. Yeah.
Thank you. Fatema, do you want to add?
I think Lata very eloquently summed it up. As a country, we're coping. But I think one of the big plus points, which I haven't found in the last 20 years, is the collaborative effort. I have now seen that we're not restricted to international boards, national boards. I've seen board officials reach out to their competitor boards, looking for corporations, looking for best practices. Finally, this industry recognizing R&D, research and development, is going critical, sharing of best practices, and honest teachers have also recognized that it's one thing to teach in the physical world and the other thing to teach in the virtual world, and it's physically exhausting. The children play the same pranks online as do in our classrooms, so that takes a bit of people. I think the faculty has also recognized that subject matter expertise is going to be critical. So for me, the state schools were virtual, and those schools that were on holiday have recognized that it is possible to come together. There is a lot of empathy, which we thought was missing. I'm going to say, see, Stephen, I think you're going to address the curriculum and the assessment bit later on, so I won't take, I'll leave that. But for me, I think as a country, the collaboration is important. It's nice to have you, Stephen, hosting this webinar, bringing in practices that have worked globally. but importantly, putting their hand up and saying, we need to get deeper in our own submatter before we can facilitate now. And this is for the next 100 years.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anybody else wants to add?
I think there seems to be a greater sense of purpose, a very strong desire to bring about that change. And rightly, as Fatema said in her introductory sentence, where she said that we've been talking about this change, revolution of sorts and reformation of sorts, but nothing really happened. We've been talking about disruption for the past 7 years. And now this was naturally disrupted, and therefore it made us think. But I thought that whether it was the public school system or the private school system, all of them have come, perhaps individually still as islands, but have started to rethink about education, rethink about what's the purpose of education. And somehow I think we have taken the baby steps forward in the very initial stages of virtual classrooms. So I think it's a good move. We've really been able to recognize the challenges. We are all struggling to find solutions to each of our challenges. But I only wish that we all come together, irrespective of which part of the world, because we can't keep talking about where problems are. We have to find solutions for everything that is around us. So I think that will, that kind of an reanalysis of the whole country's education system will help us go forward.
Sure. I think I'll move on and then ask.
Can I add, Stephen? Can I add a bit of it?
You certainly can, sir.
Probably yes. This came as a big challenge to all of us. But let me add to this. I had not estimated the empowerment of my students and my team of teachers to that level, where they have emerged in a 2 months' time. They were not used to that digital teaching learning platform. Especially, let me talk about the yoga teacher, talk about the music teacher. They were having a classroom system. But within this 2 months' time, each one of them got trained themselves. Each one of them even worked out the learning outcome essentially required from one session of digital platform. Also, probably involvement of the parent community, which earlier was taken for granted. Now, a child sitting at home connected under the guidance of these parents, probably the parent school, that home school partnership has also become very effective. So my teachers have become empowered now. My children are more focused, and the team of parents, which always we look for the personalized attention and looking after children in support of the school, we have found that has come much better in COVID-19. So on one end, we suffered. One shouldn't suffer that way, but we have taken that challenge into an opportunity and getting empowered us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh. I think one of the, at New Nordic School, one of the things obviously around our education system is that it's a paradigm shift for some people, and this notion, I think, of getting out of your comfort zone is interesting one. It's this, I think everybody now has got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and ultimately, I think we're at a crossroads of people wanting to do that. I want to just before moving on to the next question, try and take a risk myself now and try a poll with the audience. And so I'm going to put a question up, which may or may not work, we'll see. And I'd like you all to sort of give your answers in terms of how you're feeling about being comfortable or not comfortable, or you're just happy sticking with what you're doing. So I'm going to just try and pull up a question and launch a poll. So here's the poll. Hopefully you can see something on your screen. I think panelists, you can join in as well on this if you want. So do you enjoy being pushed out of your comfort zone? So yes, I embrace change. Sometimes I can see the benefit, or no, I'm really comfortable on sticking to what I know. vote now. Let's see who we've got in the audience. A couple more seconds. Okay. I'll share the results. So we've got a lot of people out there who are ready to embrace change. And that's really pleasing to see because, you know, at the end of the day, if you're always going to do the same things that you always do, you're always going to get the same results. And ultimately, that's what change is about, isn't it? It's about taking those risks and being a risk taker. So thank you for that. So moving on to question 2, and I'd like to address this to Dr. Rajesh to begin with. Question 2 involves looking at I guess this digital inequity that we maybe have in India, you know, and I was very kindly provided with some stats by my colleague Gomati, who told me that in India, only 23.8% of households have internet access. And in rural areas, 66% of the population reside, 14.9% have access. So this causes a really high degree of digital inequity. So in such a situation, how is the Indian education going to work online? And what's going to happen? What are the alternatives and what's the long-term view on this? Dr. Rajesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen, for giving me this opportunity. Yes, digital divide is a big challenge in our country, in India. If I divide the whole population, learning population, I will divide them into 3 zones. One, which is urban, has access to every facility, the latest gadgets, the best speed of internet, and every other facility. Then I go to semi-urban, semi-rural, which have facility, may not be the latest one, but they have access to the digital world. Then come to the rural, which do not have at all the access to this one. In your first question also, when you said that how India came up, the 3rd zone, which is the totally rural, doesn't have access to all these digital gadgets, yes, suffer, but it is picking up. Digital divide or digital inequality, which we often call, creates an unparalleled situation. How do we deal with this one? Certainly under this situation, when physical schools are closed, which is very unfortunate because it is not purely just academia, which one learns in the school, learning from peer group, getting inspiration, competition. These are all part of the school system, which children love and enjoy when they come to the school. But now under such situation, we are left with no other option but just to connect with the children. Whereas in urban area, which have access to all digital world, as Lata ma'am said, that we have connected with them through Teams, through Zoom, through Cisco, through you name the platform, they have adopted and started connecting with the children. Even in the semi-urban, semi-rural. I will come to basically the rural area where things are not happening. Let me take you an example of a public school. I'm a part of an academic advisory committee which has set up after this the COVID-19. And biggest challenge, and it is in Delhi, I'm talking though the zone is completely urban, but the government school deals with the lower strata of society where probably they do not have the smartphone, the laptop, the high net frequency. Idea was how to connect with them. I'm using again and again connect. I believe that learning happens when there is a connect between the teacher and taught. When teacher is connected with the child and is able to inspire the child, then learning happens. It is not the best solution, but under this situation, this is the best solution, and that is the teachers started connecting children through mobile phone. I've seen that WhatsApp, which is a very common, and though having a low speed, but a teacher connecting the children on 6 mobile call, video call, and this teacher taking a 30-minute lesson on the WhatsApp mobile call, teaching them the lesson, the concept. Probably if you are able to inspire children to learn, material is available, children would be learning, if not in the classroom as formally it happened, maybe on their home when they are under the care of their parents, under the care of their elder siblings, and even in the neighborhood. So digital divide certainly has caused a big loss to the learning community. But then this, to overcome this loss, people have started connecting this one. The Career Launcher, a company, has started this for the government school children, where they are making the small videos. Those who can connect online with the frequency available, great. Those who cannot connect online, they are having a YouTube small videos lesson, which they can download and go through. There is an NGO called Sampark Foundation. This Sampark Foundation has come out with the pre-recorded small tablets which require just 4 GB memory space. They have downloaded different, preloaded, the different concept and distributed these tablets, you call it small gadgets, which they have distributed in each village, and asked the Sarpanch, the head of that village, that you have a connecting class there only and let children learn through these tablets. So people are looking for an alternative which could be right now in this time, testing time, could be used. But is it a long-term alternative? No. Long-term alternative, government has to come out. The private agencies, they have to come out. They have to work out certainly for a digital solution which is equally available. There is no inequity of digital, as you have mentioned. When we are talking about connecting with the children, I loved in your presentation when you said your curriculum is personal, personalized, and purposeful. I believe whenever there is a connect with the children with these 3 P's, personal, personalized, and purposeful, believe it, learning would happen. With this pace, if we go, because COVID is not going, impact of COVID would remain here. For years to come, it will remain here. We have to look for another alternative of teaching pedagogy. People are calling nowadays, it is panic-goggy. It's certainly panic-goggy nowadays, but we have to look for an alternative pedagogy, and that is digital, which is going to help. So I believe let's look for a slow step right now, a solution, and then we go for a long term where government, private agency, and other methodology which comes in. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh. Panic-goggy, that's the word of the day for me at the moment. It's Lata first, then Fatema afterwards. We're on mute, I think.
Can I just add?
Of course you can.
Yeah. So the interesting word when we are talking digital connect for all to access with excellence and equity, the word connect is so beautiful. And there's something which is very interesting that happened. This connectivity went to a little emotional level, and I was hearing, I was part of this discussion where Haryana, the state in which I live currently, I live in Gurgaon, and some of the feedbacks that we got was beautiful. One of, other than exactly what Mr. Hassija said all this while, the connectivity issue was that there were 200 volunteers who reached out to the village panchayats in Haryana, reached them, and just picked up the telephone and started educating children, the seniors, some seniors from the colleges and some senior students of the schools, educating the junior ones. They picked up the telephones and started connecting and educating children in certain subjects as volunteers. Then the government came up with another scheme which is called the SEED scheme, which is about skill education and emotional education, emotional development, SEED. That's how it's abbreviated. And marrying the two, they are taking care of the fact that they're trying to provide for this through various means, including some programs on the TV, some podcasts, some recordings, some radio lessons, and passing it on from village to village so that the village panchayat can take the responsibility. So what I can see through this connect, as we are talking about, in not only in the connectivity space in that sense, but I think it's going down right down to the grassroots level, which is what I think a democratically organized government must be doing, so that the last mile connectivity is there. And slowly, I think once these things begin to impact change and the interest is shown and the emotional stability of children who are being educated, as also the families recognize the importance of such things, then I think the transition into a more carefully crafted, well understood digital online e-learning programs will begin to become more fruitful. I think we are in the brink of that change, and each state is coming up with its own solution to a large extent. And I'm pretty excited to see human connectivity also happening, and the seniors taking a little more, I'm talking of young adults taking more responsibility for making things happen. That I think is one of the offshoots of this, and possibly a greater advantage in the system.
Fatema, did you want to add something?
And actually, Lata did mention some of the points that I want to, so I'm not going to repeat them. But what I think is, your question, which is also what is the one takeaway? What's the one lesson that we have learned? I think Rajesh mentioned it very clearly. To be sustainable, it's going to be blended learning.
Yeah.
IT infrastructure is a big priority, thankfully, now from a government initiative. So it's not only for the affluent, but frankly, metros are struggling in the same way as rural India. We do not have connectivity even in the metros. So let's not be in any illusion that 42% in metros are fine. I have an unstable connection as I speak. So we have our challenges. I think from a policy perspective, Stephen, one good thing out of COVID-19, world cannot live without technology. Thankfully, that technology debate will end. We will have investment schools, upping their IT infrastructure, board officials actually looking at cable connections, looking at their Doordarshan channels, etc. Will be point is now orientation towards embracing technology the right way. I still don't agree with 7 hours online teaching as a substitute. It has to be blended thing. It has to have a balance. It has to have a balance. And I think that's our big learning. We're going to have to think this through, and we're going to have to then therefore decide what we were doing in the physical world cannot be done in the virtual world, and therefore can our curriculum go under some rethink, because then it's about skills. It isn't about content. I think the IT handicap brings us to the point, which is about curriculum now. Relevance. Do we do so? Can they? I mean, why? I would grade this fifth grade student after 2 weeks of being in summer holidays, coming back and telling me, I know how to cook, I can do my laundry, I've organized my timetable, I'm taking accountability, all of that. How come we're not doing this kid? For me, that's an A+. This is what industry wants out of our kids, but we're still not doing it. So I think, Stephen, that's your next question anyway. Sorry, I jumped in. Technology has taught us that we're going to have to think creatively, and it's not digitalization. There's more to it.
I think it's wrong. It's a wrong notion to believe that the rural India doesn't have connectivity. Not at all. I think that's the first thing that we have, and I think they're also yearning to have that connectivity. So I think one is the government's initiative. The two is the CSR from corporates that can come in. But above all, I think the willingness of people to take to it, I think will definitely make a very important change in making children more digital, even in the rural segment. So this question, and over a period of time, I always think that this is not going to be a permanent one. It's going to be a blended learning solution to the later extent. So they can always come in. I think also that schools are community centers. centers for the community to come together to learn something. It's not, as Fatima said, it's not just about academics. It's not about subjects. It's about learning so many things, health, hygiene, how important it is, because all of that needs to be connected. And why don't we turn our community centers, the villages, into community centers, bring across people across whatever ages that they belong to, men and women, make them understand about their health, their hygiene, the need for sanitation. And therefore, for me, as much as we need roads, buildings, infrastructure, water, we need education. That must get top priority. Somewhere along, that realization must come that education cannot wait. That also must happen simultaneously. If it's prioritized, I'm sure that we'll find solutions to many of our problems.
Thank you.
Stephen, can I add a line more?
One final point before we move on then. Thank you.
Number one, when I said rural means the latest gadget and technology not there, unfortunately, we are very slow to learn. In 2000, Government of India launched VSAT education system.
Yeah.
It worked very well for a year. It flopped. Former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, launched EduSat, a TV channel. I was part of that committee when CBSE introduced it. It worked for a year. It again flopped. My only concern is that, learning has to happen. We have to evolve continuously, not when the challenge comes, when the problem comes, then you look for a solution. Yes, school is important. I'm submitting that school is not only the place to learn. Learning can happen anywhere within the school or outside the school. But yes, we have to evolve new methodologies for that. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. I think there's some really good points made there, and this word connectivity is really coming out. And I think it's not just about connectivity of the internet. I think it's about connectivity of people, isn't it? At the end of the day, and I think ultimately, I think that in order for things to move forward, so we've got to have this democratization of connectivity where everybody has to take ownership of it, and it's everybody's responsibility to get connected, and and there's a starting point for sure, but ultimately I think there's an ownership that everybody has to take responsibility, that this is important for everybody going forward, and I think that's coming through in terms of all the different messages that I'm hearing there. Let's just try a poll again before we move on to the next question. I don't know if it worked last time, but I'm enjoying myself, so I'll carry on. Ultimately, this question is about obviously connectivity, and I've kept it at quite a basic level. So in terms of, I was just interested to see, because I think the panelists shared slightly different views around actual connectivities themselves, and saying in rural areas there is connectivities there. So where in terms of yourselves and where you're working from and where you're living, do you have a good internet connection to be able to teach online or work online? Are you sometimes a little bit slow and therefore you get an interruption, or are you in a position where you really do have poor internet and you're not able to deliver online learning? I just want to see if there is any kind of misconception in those statistics that I read out at the start. Couple more seconds. And looking at the results, most of you then have pretty good internet connection, and some of you obviously have the frustrations, I think, like most of us have, around internet being not necessarily consistent, I think is the word there. And then only a few of you have poor or very little internet connection. So interesting to see the viewpoint from the audience there. So moving on to question 3, I want to address this question to Revathi. And this question is about, I guess, I need to sort of preface it with a little bit about New Nordic School in a sense. It's, we put a large emphasis and belief on students needing more than ever the skills of critical thinking, creativity, collaboration. It's at the heart of our competencies in terms of the curriculum. We encourage students to learn. Okay, yes, there may be a standardized test at the end of it. But ultimately, it's about all the other skills they've learned along the way, the skills of learning how to learn, being at the core and heart of what we do. In the current situation, I think, and particularly obviously, I think notably in India, the importance of standardized assessments and assessments seems to have taken a bit of a back seat. So how do you see, but before was so important and deemed to be the kind of, you know, the gateway to university and still is, maybe, I don't know. So I'm really throwing that question out there to sort of ask you, how do you see forms of assessment changing in the future?
Thank you. I think a lot of focus has
Sorry,
always been...
I can't see anybody. Why? Sorry. I can't even unmute myself. Oh my God. What's wrong? Okay, can you all hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, I can't see anything. My screen is just...
You're frozen, I think.
Yeah.
We'll carry on whilst you
Okay.
unfreeze yourself.
Yeah, carry on.
So
Sorry.
there has been a lot of emphasis on routines, on right answers that we must get, and standardized formats. So that has been a scheme for a long time. Over the past maybe 5 to 10 years, there's been changes happening in isolation, and that's the very first and the beginning of good signs ahead. However, at this point of time, when this kind of a disruption happens, it's important for us to focus on the purpose of education. And for me, it is deeper learning. And when there is deeper learning, it means that you're going into the depth of learning. So it's not about the number of lessons that you need to do. It's not about the number of tests that you have to do. And then what is the cumulative effect of all the formative and the summative tests? It's not about that. So the whole idea of what is an assessment and what do you want to assess is the question. And I have a very, very broad view of it. First of all, when it comes to academic subjects, I believe that tests can be of various kinds. It's not just about questions and answers that children have to do. You can give them a project. You can give them an open textbook. You can give them something to write, which would be something as imaginative as possible. Say, what if it rains Coca-Colas? An essay like this, it allows for children to imagine what the situation would be like if you don't have the rains and you're having a rain of Coca-Colas. So let's just think like that. So how do you emphasize on thinking very differently of situations that they have not been in? When that happens, what we are in now would be a kind of situation that we get like this, a difficulty or a challenge. They would be able to address such problems in real life. So I think we have to put these questions as a part of the real life. The second that I felt was, while we are making very, very creative questions, how about making the questions and relating it to values of life? For example, something that I would personally like, and I'm giving from an example straight right from yesterday or day before yesterday. So many trains went from Mumbai to Gorakhpur, which is in UP. And there were so many passengers, there are so many seats in the train. There were so many passengers waiting in the platform. These many passengers were left behind. They could not take the train because they did not get a seat. How many more trains have we to ply? It's a question that children will start thinking. You're also helping them to think in terms of India's problems, the country's problems. They will start empathizing. They will learn to be sensitive. They will learn to plan better. Can we give them town planning as an assignment? Okay. The school cannot be next to a hospital. It cannot be next to a place of worship. Questions like this, and you can imagine how beautifully children will design a beautiful township. And you will have to mention that you need water, you need electricity, there has to be a pump station. and they will design so beautifully. Can we put this across to our local committees? You know, these are the things that will make children feel good. And this boosting of self-esteem will help children start thinking about world problems as if they were the ones who are going to be the solution providers. And that's when you're going to get children who stand up for the country, for the world, and for humanity at large. So we have to start coming across with this. Apart from this, why can't we give them case studies to analyze? That's another kind of assessment. You can give them multiple choice questions, of course, but apart from that, you can also give them picture diagrams and ask them to analyze what that picture was trying to say. So there are assignments that you can do by the way of movies that you can show and ask them to draw their own conclusions with regards to messages or character building, whatever. So I think that's how we have to teach our children to do assignments. There's the other kind of assignments that one can do, which is an oral and oral assignment, which means that children listen to some piece of speech and then write answers. Now, these I'm giving are very common ones, but we don't do it on an everyday basis because we think it's time consuming. Why? Because the teacher thinks if I spend so much time doing this test, I'm going to waste my time and I won't be able to complete portions. I won't be able to complete the syllabus. And that's why it's very important for teachers and for school leaders to emphasize the fact that deeper learning is more important than the completion of the syllabus. For example, if I can give you, we never teach a child to play cricket by the way of saying today for the next 10 days you're going to bowl. Then the next 10 days you just hold the ball and then you will bowl. Then for the next 10 days after that, you say, now take the bat. Now practicing the bat positions, okay? We don't practice like that. We just give the ball for a 2.5, 3-year-old child. We just tell you stand there and we throw the ball and the child hits the ball. The child, yes. And when he plays like that, what really happens? The child understands the game as a whole. That's what our children should understand. They must first understand the subject as a whole. And are we able to pursue those kind of interests for the child? So that's our main purpose. We have to help children identify their interests. That domain, we should be able to protect it. We should be able to bring it across for them so that they understand that better and deeper learning truly happens.
Thank you, Revathi. Really, some really good practical examples there. And I love the one about relating the values of life. And that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Fatema, do you want to add something there? I think we've lost Lata, by the way. So I think she might be frozen. So yeah, you guys can carry on. No worries.
Please allow me to add.
I think Fatema first, Dr. Rajesh, and then I'll add you to add after that.
Right. Revathi has very, very nicely summed up the total purpose of evaluation assessment. But this is an ideal. Unfortunately, in our system, it is not working that effectively. You know, how can you assess learning in terms of scores? But we are doing it. And the parent, the demand, the society, the number, limited seats at higher education. There are so many factors connected with all these that sometime in that rut, we forget that we are teachers. We become actually statistician whose job is only to you label the score and say the best child, the 100 out of 100, that's all about it. When we have empowered ourselves in this COVID-19 situation, when we have switched to new pedagogies, we have come to digital platform, I think it is high time we must also switch to a new paradigm of assessment. Assessment where we are able to inspire children to have empathy, teamwork, communication, creativity, innovation. These are all we talk about 21st century skill, whereas whatever our formal assessment, which is in terms of pen and paper, it's all 20th, which talks about speed, which talks about quantifiable things. We need to stop that one. This cannot be done just with one person. The governance has to come into it. The policies have to work into that one. But we cannot wait for the governance. Your PPT was saying that from isolation to integration. I think somewhere we need to integrate these 21st century skills values along with those which we are testing in the formal routine assessment. Let's come out with a new statement of questions. Revathi has beautifully phrased a number of questions on that one. Let's work out a new design of the question paper. It is not a formal question paper. Let it be an open-ended, let be an open time limit where the child is not able to express only the academia part, but also able to express the creativity, the language, the innovative solution to the problem. If we do that one in integration, probably the assessment would have a new meaning and we will justify our process of teaching and learning. Thank you.
True, Rajesh. I just would like to add one thing, Fatima, just give me a minute. Just wanted to say this, that it's very important for us to take that risk and make those changes at least till grade 7, which is completely in our hands. So when they start thinking differently, I think they'll be able to present themselves better. And if it becomes interdisciplinary, I think the interest for how relevant what I'm learning is, or the relevance of learning, if I can put it that way, the relevance of learning will actually be highlighted. Yes, Fatima.
Thank you so much. Some fact point of view, Rajesh. I was just going to say that as an industry, we've taken stock of the fact that we're not preparing kids for tomorrow. I think as an industry, we're recognizing it's 2080. These are this future in our classrooms today is going to have to solve those problems, which we've anyway created enough of. We're responsible for the problems. It's going to be up to those children to now think of it. They cannot, if it is going to be board restricted. They cannot, and I'm not going to hire that 100 on 100 on paper in English and incapable of making the elevator speech, incapable of answering a question in 20 seconds, incapable of getting to the point that has to be made. I think we've lost enough. This, Revathi, like you mentioned, needs to come together as a whole. You know what, Stephen, one of the big things we've realized is teachers needed the textbook to play lessons. And when I spoke to them, don't you forget the textbooks. Why don't we take Harry Potter and just do it in grade English, math, science, life skills. Let's call it language arts. Let's call it numeracy. Let's call it exploration, the fear. So I'm grateful that Revathi mentioned we've got to have to make the risks. We're going to have to take the risk. Our IT curriculum, Stephen, whether it's national or international schools, is outdated. What they are studying right now has no relevance to practical life. That's why we're not skilled when we're coping with online education. That needs to now come in. We need to focus on tangibles. And I'm okay, you assess the kids, do pen and paper exams. What is that mark sheet that's going to define the learning stream? What is it that's going to eventually be employable? And what is that's going to get these kids in industry? And where are the entrepreneurs? Where are the kids getting into internships in industry when they're in middle school? We don't do all of that. So finally, we're reassessing to prepare the future. A lot of this has to be rethought of, and forget the board examinations. This is where parents finally have had a say, and they're saying, we're with you, educators. We're not fixated on the marks. Because when my 10-year-old is coming to me and saying, I'm bored and I don't have time for him, I'm recognizing the fact that maybe he's too dependent and maybe the system has made him dependent. Where is the critical thinking? Where's communication? Where is critical solving? It's not there. So the kids are capable. We made them dependent. Our system made them dependent. So even good things. We're thinking futuristic. We need ideas like the presentation we saw. Basically, let's rethink content. There's knowledge, which I'm not arguing with. language arts is difficult. There has to be scaffolding. It's negotiable, non-negotiable. But we need to solve problems, and therefore case studies come in. They need more time with guest speakers. They cannot only be taught letters. They need to collaborate. There are more virtual classrooms that will come about. I'm excited about the changes because, and like Lata said, one bomb couldn't do it. COVID-19 did. And it's about time we make those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you guys chat. I mean, like, one of the challenges we face with the Nordic school education system, one of the first questions we're asked is, so where do the students go after after they finish high school? This grade A, this panacea, is so important, and it unlocks, so many doors, and it doesn't matter how you get there. We want that grade A, quite frankly, and ultimately we're saying, well, well, you can have the grade A if you want. We can align ourselves to traditional examination systems, but this is what you get much more, in terms of our, and there's a real sort of mind shift that still needs to happen, I feel. And universities also need to change as well in terms of how they operate, and not accepting the grade A anymore, and the portfolio of evidence. And we're already starting to see that in terms of interdisciplinary learning in universities now. And I think that, I think what we want to be that, again, that catalyst for change, to be able to say it's not just about the grade now, it's about the skills and competences and what the whole package you come with. That grade A is not going to help you now in lockdown, whereas if you have compassion, you have empathy, you have critical thinking skills, you're innovative, those are the skills that matter right now, aren't they? So, but it's a challenge, isn't it?
So, Stephen, I was just on a webinar where there was head of HR of large corporations that are incidentally still hiring. And one of the questions asked of the HR head was important for principals to understand. None of them asked for grade, none of them for technical ability, none of them were asking for evidence of performance. They were asking for multitaskers. They were asking for communicators. They were asking for people who are familiar with technology. And if you think about that's what the industry wants, what are we teaching? So I think that just puts it in perspective, and therefore it has to all come together. So it's an important one for principals to recognize. And Stephen, we have a long way as far as parents are concerned. I'm just talking about that 1%. Yes, we want skills. The whole country is not wanting to pay fees at the moment, saying physical school is different from virtual school. Yeah. So we won't pay fees. But we need to orient. I think a lot of us need to be talking to parents and saying, get out of the mark system, think about skills. And it's a step forward.
It is.
So, Fatema, let me bring you on to our last question and introduce, just really to, I guess, to summarize, I think hopefully what's coming across through this webinar is the need for change. And I think, as I mentioned before, at New Nordic School, we very much want to be part of that change in education and offer a new curriculum and education system. Given the current situation, what kind of top 3 priorities, some takeaways maybe, you think schools in India should focus on going forwards to transform learning in their schools and really give the best possible life chances to their students? And we're now rejoined by Mrs.
Yeah,
Lata.
Thank God. Thank God. Thankfully, I was hearing all of you, which was more important clearly, but I'm glad I'm able to come in. I think very beautifully this aspect has been dealt with in terms of, how the assessments have to happen. Just a couple of examples based on our current experience. As an example, exactly as Revathi and Fatema so beautifully summarized, we asked the children to do their own holiday homework in terms of projects. And we told them, take up all the 17 Sustainable Millennium Goals and state your problems and find the solutions. And it was very interesting to see, as she rightly said, that they were able to come up. And two of them, in fact, talked about how are we going to deal with given these new norms of the schools reopening, which they have all been waiting for because children really want to come back. They said, we want to make a document on how the new norms will be when the schools reopen and how will the transport system be managed. And that was a project they have taken on by themselves, the senior school children, to understand how all this is going to happen. So when we take that document coming from a 13, 14-year-old child and look at all the governments and the big institutions coming up with the norms and compare the two, you find very few gaps.
Yes.
And therefore, I think if we are able to shift from our current way of thinking and looking at asking them to identify the problems that exist in these developing economies like ours, for example, I think they will be coming up with a lot more. The other thing that we tried was telling them that, look, we will give you the answers, please send us the question papers.
Yeah.
And it was very remarkable to see that the question papers they said for themselves at their own levels were a little more difficult than what we would have probably said for them.
That's a nice one.
Now, if they know how to set questions, they clearly know how to find the answers. So one of the things that I think we need to, at least till such time that we have the independence to do what we want and we are not locked into the systems of either the boards or the universities, I think higher education really needs to change, because it is sometimes gearing to the higher education that we do a few things that we do in our board going classes. But at least where we have the independence to do what we want to do, I think it's high time we changed, because the child today is going to be in the workforce 20 years hence, or at least a decade hence, and things are not going to be exactly what they are today. And all these changes, all these thoughtful processes, and which require, I think in a very strange way, some criterion referenced evaluation so that people know what they're asking and how they will assess these people, and looking for those things and communicating that clearly to both the students and the parents would become very, very critical in the days to come. Here is a chance, teachers. Let's do it, is what we should be saying.
Thank you. Thanks for rejoining us as well, Mrs. Lata. I appreciate that.
God. No, I tried so hard. Again, technology challenge, but I think I quite won it.
Always have a backup plan. That's the thing about technology. Yeah. Fatema, right. I think we actually are running out of time. So I'm going to actually just try and really keep you to sort of like on the clock in terms of just, a couple of, priorities that you would say schools to focus on going forward. So, I'll take a couple from you, Fatema, and if you've got time, a couple from the rest of the panelists.
Now, keep it short. I think we've all mentioned it at various points. So the top three for me personally, first one is curriculum. You're going to have to think of all the non-negotiables that you still want. Transdisciplinary, bring subjects together, reduce content, go deeper in learning. It's okay if that child doesn't solve all the problems. And it doesn't matter whether it's national or international. I've heard this argument for 20 years. It doesn't stand anymore. If we have to get there, we're going to have to make those changes today. Also recognize what can be taught in the physical world cannot be taught virtually. Don't push students to do with the children. Live sessions should be about solving the problems with the facilitators, teachers. Parents need to be a supportive part of the process, which is my point. Communication, effective communication. Rightly pointed it out. What are your expectations? What are you teaching? What are you assessing? That has never been a point of clarity to the child or the parent, except for the teacher. Everybody seems to be lost. I think the effective communication is now letting people know what your expectations are, what your deliverables are, talking to them about your problems, because this is not going away. Blended learning is going to take a while to get used to, and we'll have to work together. And last, completely non-negotiable for me, is skilling of parents, teachers, and children for IT infrastructure. It's hardware, software. People need to do it independently. You don't need an IT manager to help you get on to Zoom. These things now your 21st century skills, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. I've just solved it by saying, this is it, get this right. Sorry to say, board examinations today may be cancelled. Will your child still get a job? Yes. Will you ever think about that mark again? No. But when your child doesn't get a job, that's when you ask for favors. Think again why your child is not getting the job, because paper perfect, unfortunately, skill deficient. And today, the world is going to decide basis of skill. This has to be the focal point for everybody watching. Don't give answers about board expectations that's there. Revathi just said you still have their lives, at least up to grade 8. You can do a lot.
Grade 8.
9th and 10th for me are business end of the years. Children are literally with us for 1 year. Half the time they're on study leave. Guys, think about what we're responsible for. And I think we're educators are responsible for that action. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you. Anybody else want to add a couple of priorities, takeaways for practical advice for schools?
Yes, Stephen, allow me to do so. I personally feel this situation has given us a number of points to ponder on. Few pickups which we must look into. I feel number one, we must reorient our teachers. Anything can happen if teacher is empowered. Fatema just said that children are with us 1 year. I little differ with that. Even if I have taught a child for 1 year, 40 years back, the child is still connected with me because that connect is there. So let us empower our teachers to handle the situation in all circumstances. COVID or not so COVID. Teacher is not expected just to cover the syllabi, rather uncover or discover the syllabi. This journey of discovering the syllabi with the children, I tell you, would make a total different impact. The teacher will become a role model, would be an inspiring, influence on the child psyche. So that's one thing which we must look into it. Number two, I personally feel that we should look into the curriculum. Curriculum design has to be where, these skills are focused on rather than the theoretical aspect on which the paper is tested, board examination. Revathi also said that we shouldn't have a fear. Probably up to number one, up to class 8, there is no fear. Let's go ahead. It's only our mindset because we are preparing children for 12th board exam. Their question comes like this, so we go down to like that. We need to change. And then again come to my first thing, which I said, let us empower our teacher for transaction of curriculum, for assessment, for inspiration, for inculcating the 21st century skills, for inculcating values, for all such. That's one teacher which is to be taken into account. Lastly, specifically in India, keeping in mind Indian system, we talked also on in this answer, which I said, no question number 2, there is a huge digital divide. The government, the private sector, everybody has to take ownership and look into it. Because if this digital divide continues, probably the unparalleled economy would also come. Leave apart learning, because learning further leading to entrepreneurship or the job, both leads to economy. So we must work out some way that digital divide doesn't exist in any part of the world. India has it. So I'm talking about the Indian scenario. Thank you very much.
Can I just take 1 minute?
1 minute, please, Mrs. Lata.
Okay. I'm getting a little poetic. I'm getting a little restless somewhere, that I think in wanting to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and which we will all do as educators and lead our teams into doing it. I'm wondering whether there can be a newer and a fresher narrative. I hope when all this is over, of course, we'll not be the same. At least by Pareto's 80-20 principle, there'll be this huge change and we will do it. But can the new narrative also be around care, belonging, and community, around stillness, around slowing down, around being, around kindness and love, around lockdown as a cool thing to help us, help nature to heal, around the power of play and art in our lives and learning and connections, around regeneration and beyond growth and sustainability? Can we do all this in a manner in which we can include it in our whole curriculum? Can this be the bedrock on which we will manage the stillness and yet not so still waters in which we have to cope with? Thank you so much.
Thank you for those thoughts.
In fact, Stephen, I just have to, in fact, I was having a very similar idea to what Lata had said. I would summarize it as a culture of mindfulness, culture of care and inclusiveness, and the culture of empowerment. I
Yeah.
think if we do that, and empowerment is not just of the teachers, but every staff member, every student, so that each one of them would rise to their fullest potential.
Thank you very much. And I know, Fatema, you have to go in a minute. I'm gonna wrap up and really just summarize. It won't take me more than a minute. I'm hearing some really nice sort of summaries there and key phrases and words. Connectivity, I think, has run through the course of this webinar as a takeaway. Empowerment, curriculum changes, which is obviously an area dear to New Nordic School's heart, and we hope that we can get involved in some schools in India in the future. But this notion of like keeping calm, trying to, get rid of the noise, and keeping calm, and I think is going to be important in the future as well. So I want to thank all the panelists for their real contributions today. It's been fabulous actually working with you all. In terms of the audience as well, I want to thank the audience as well. I might just leave you with one thought, and also we'll come back to the questions that people have kindly sent in and address with those offline. But I want you to maybe think about one thing that you may now go away after this webinar, and you might start, you might stop, or you might continue as a result of listening to the panelists today. If you can maybe reflect on that, I think that might be a good way forward as well. So thank you, panelists, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you physically in the future as well. And in the meantime, I look forward to working with you virtually as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, all panelists. It was lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, attendees.
And Rajesh, thank you.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much.